You can face many problems and errors when creating a formula. It's enough you'll start typing a formula and you will forget about some kind of argument. When you try to hit enter, sometimes Excel will try to use the autocorrection option, but if you won't agree, you will see that it is not allowed to move on. You can expect also some errors when trying to write the formulas using the formulas names, like if you don't close the bracket with any of the formulas, you might get an error that something is missing. If you use too few arguments within the formula, once again you will get an error and Excel will not allow you to accept the formula by hitting enter. You might expect many errors as a result of the formula, and there are here we can find just a few examples of that, like when you divide by 0, you get an error. When you try to reference a formula name, address or a defined name that don't exist, or you break some other rules, you can get a name error. If you are looking for something that is not available, for example, when we will discover the VLOOKUP formula, you can get not available error, and there is also a function NA that can return this kind of error. If you get a value error, you need to correct one of the formula arguments because it is not acceptable by Excel. If you create a reference to a cell and then the cell will be deleted, you can face the reference error. If you try to calculate something that is not possible from the math perspective, you can get the number error. Sometimes you just see the hash within the cell. This is actually not an error, but you need to expand the column to have a look on the whole cell content. If you try to insert a really long number, Excel at some point will start rounding this number. This is, for example, in case of bank account numbers. What can you do in this kind of scenario? Either before entering the data, you can set the text format of a cell, or you start typing the text with using the apostrophe, so that when you enter a long number, Excel will not round it. Let me show it once again. Without any apostrophe or text format, Excel will change the number to a different one. Sometimes you can also see the scientific format that you can sometimes get rid of by making more spaces for your data or changing the number of decimal places. What is the biggest problem with errors? If you create a formula that calculates something, like in our scenario 1 plus A2 cell, then each of the errors is then replicated in any other relating formula. So that is why we usually try to get rid of the errors. Before creating a formula, you can use a few formulas that can check whether the result of the operation is an error or not. And one of them is the isError formula that will check whether the formula gives an error or not. This is a kind of logical formula that will return true or false. The second one is the formula isError, a bit shorter name, that will give you almost exactly the same result except for the NA, not available value. Why is that? Because not available doesn't mean we have an error in a formula, but it gives us an information that we didn't find anything. The information that we are looking for was not there. And the last one is the one that can check whether something is an A or not. So in case of all of the errors, it will give us the false result, but it checks whether the information is NA or not. If your formula is inconsistent with the surrounding formulas, Excel will let you know. And you can either copy the formula from above, which will change the formula to the one that is in this column, or you can just ignore the error and this exclamation mark will disappear. Very helpful tools can be found on the Formulas tab, where you can find two useful actions, trace precedence will show you that the formula is dependent from two other formulas. To remove arrows, you can use another action on the formulas tab. And the second one, trace dependence, will show you cells that depend on the selected formula. Once again, you can remove the arrows. Circular reference is an advanced topic that is out of scope of this course. It is used in some very advanced scenarios, but in most of the cases it just informs you that you are trying to create a calculation that is dependent on the same cell where you write the calculation. I will try to create the formula equals M3 and we will get the circular reference error. When I hit OK, you will see that I'm trying to create a formula referring to M3 that is dependent from N3 that once again is dependent from L3 initial cell. In this case, you probably need to modify the relations between the cells and the error will disappear, so we can remove arrows and once again design the formula in L3 cell. And the last thing in this exercise, if you see a very complex formula and you don't know how the end result comes, you can use the evaluate formula operation that will allow you to evaluate one by one all of the operations starting with the inner ones to see what is the intermediate result and what is the end result. This is very useful when trying to understand how the formula works.